I've been thinking a lot lately about how we consume things we love, and more importantly, how we scream at each other about the things we love. Somewhere along the line, the internet turned media consumption into a competitive sport. It's no longer enough to just watch a show or play a game. You have to have the correct take on it. You have to win the interaction. We've built this bizarre ecosystem where enjoyment is treated as a secondary stat to critical accuracy. If you like the bad thing, you aren't just having a different taste, you are cringe. You are objectively wrong. On the flip side, if you don't consume the good thing in the specific mathematically precise order that a subreddit decided on 4 years ago, you're labeled a fake fan or secondary. And look, I get it. I'm a passionate person. When I get into something, I get into it. My brain is wired to obsess, to categorize, and to analyze. But recently, I've come to terms with the massive difference between having standards for yourself and forcing those standards on everyone else. We have confused critical analysis with moral imperative. The hard truth is that sometimes, frankly, our opinions just don't matter, and realizing that is actually incredibly liberating. Let's talk about my obsession, my special interest, the absolute labyrinth that is the Fate franchise in the wider Type Moon universe. If you know me, you know I don't just watch Fate, I live in the Nasuverse. I've done the homework, I've read the visual novels. Yes, the 60-hour text dumps with the outdated sprites and the questionable pacing. I've clocked a combined hundreds of hours into the Fate games on Steam. I'm not just talking about the mainstream stuff. I've perfected runs in Fate Samurai Remnant. I've ground my sanity to dust in the Extella titles just to unlock slightly different dialogue options. I have strong, arguably annoying opinions about the adaptation. I will go to my grave arguing that you cannot fully understand Shiro Emiya's character arc, specifically his survival's guilt and his distorted view of heroism, without the internal monologues that the anime adaptations largely cut. I have complicated feelings about how Studio Dean handled the Saber route back in 2006 versus the glossy, high budget spectacle of UFO Table. And don't even get me started on the Heaven's Feel movies. To me, specifically, those films felt like a genuine betrayal. They took my absolute favorite route of the entire franchise, the one with the most psychological depth and narrative weight, and cut out nearly everything that made it special. They sacrificed the slow, painful character work for the sake of pacing and spectacle, leaving behind a hollow shell of a story I fell in love with. It was honestly painful to sit through. I also have deep, fundamental gripes with the direction of the franchise itself. I am critical of the censorship and sanitization we've seen over the years. To me, the original uncensored PC 2004 visual novel is the truest and purest representation of what Fate should be, and losing that adult edge feels like a betrayal of the source. I also think the franchise focuses too much on Japanese and Asian servants at the expense of everyone else. We get 20 new samurai, but where are the American servants? Even more baffling, where are the figures from Christian myth? Where is Lucifer? Where are the named angels? Where is Jesus? It feels like a massive blind spot in a series about human history. But here is the thing. I can hold these opinions. I can wish for a grittier, more diverse fate without thinking you are a fake fan for disagreeing with me. You aren't cringe if you prefer the sanitized versions or if you love the current servant lineup. In the Fate fandom, we are infamous for the Watch Order Wars. It is the single most toxic entry barrier to one of the coolest franchises in fiction. If a newcomer dares to ask, hey, where do I start? They don't get a simple answer. They get hit with a 40-page dissertation. They get told that starting with Fate Zero is a sin because it spoils Heaven's Feel, or that starting with Unlimited Blade Works leaves out context, or that being an anime only fan makes you a second class citizen. But honestly, I am done with it. I never bought into the watch order argument to begin with, and the older I get, the more I realize how silly it is. Here is my official stance. Whatever gets you into Fate is the correct watch order. We treat this franchise like it's a delicate historical artifact that will crumble if you look at it sideways. It's not. It's a cool story about legendary heroes fighting in a battle royale. If someone watches Fate Zero first because they saw a cool clip of Gilgamesh on TikTok and they thought the animation looked sick, that's a win. That is a new person enjoying the thing we love. If someone only plays Grand Order because they like the character designs and has no idea who Angru Mainyu is, that is fine. If someone watched the 2006 Dean adaptation and loved the soundtrack, I'm not going to sit there and explain to them why the animation was subpar. I couldn't care less about the literary thematic integrity of the Watch Order anymore. My adherence to the lore is valid for me, but it shouldn't be a barrier for you. I've seen people get practically bullied out of the fandom because they didn't consume the media in the approved way, and that is ridiculous. If you watch Unlimited Blade Works and thought it was just a cool action show with magic swords and you didn't write a thesis on utilitarianism, I'm glad you had fun. My knowledge of the lore doesn't give me the right to invalidate your excitement. And then we have the other side of the coin, the shows that you aren't just discouraged from watching, but practically required to hate if you want to sit at the cool kids table. I'm talking about the explosion of indie animation, Has Been a Hotel, and the Amazing Digital Circus. I love these shows. Unironically, Has Been Hotel is a blast. The Broadway style musical numbers, the intricate character designs, the sheer ambition of an indie pilot turning into a massive streaming hit, and the amazing digital circus hit me with a level of existential dread and surreal comedy that I haven't felt since I was a kid watching weird late night cartoons. But if you go on Twitter or X or whatever, you'd think these shows were crimes against humanity. There's the weird, toxic ecosystem of haters who build their entire personality around calling these shows cringe. It's become a badge of honor to dunk on them. People criticize the writing, saying it's too edgy or too random, often without watching more than a few clips out of context. They judge the entire fan base based on a few weird content forums or YouTube kids' brain rot videos, completely ignoring the actual show. I've seen people dismiss Has-Been fans as edgy teenagers or the Amazing Digital Circus fans as iPad kids, and it makes me so angry. Not just because I like these shows, but because the cynicism is so boring. It is so easy to be cynical. It is so easy to point at something sincere and loud and colorful and call it cringe. It takes zero effort to mock people for having fun. Cringe culture is just a weapon we use to shame people for being enthusiastic about things that aren't cool or prestige. But let's dig a little deeper into why people connect with these shows, especially Has Been Hotel and its sister series, Hell of a Boss. These shows have become a massive, vital safe havens for the LGBTQIA plus community and for neurodivergent folks. Why? Because these stories are loud, colorful, and unapologetically about the freaks and outcasts finding a found family. When you live in a world that often demands you mask your neurodivergence or hide your queerness to fit in, seeing a character like Blitzo or Angel Dust, characters who are messy, flawed, chaotic, but ultimately loved, is powerful. It resonates. It creates a space where being too much is actually just enough. So I have to ask the haters, what is the actual harm? If a trans kid in a hostile environment finds comfort in a singing demon princess, how does that hurt the world? If an autistic person finds joy and representation in the chaotic energy of the amazing digital circus, what do you gain by mocking them? What do you lose by letting them be happy? The people who attack these shows often act like they are defending the sanctity of good art, but in reality, they are bullying people for finding happiness in places they don't approve of. And honestly, that says way more about their own insecurities than it does about the quality of a cartoon. Who am I, or who are you, to look at someone finding genuine joy in a colorful singing demon show and saying, actually, the pacing in episode 4 was rushed and the dialogue is derivative, so you're wrong for smiling? This brings me to a concept I want to retire, the guilty pleasure. Why should I feel guilty? Why should you feel guilty? We act like there is an objective scoreboard of quality, and if we enjoy something that scores low, we have to apologize for it. Oh, I know it's trash, but I love it. Stop saying that. You don't have to preface your joy with an apology. If you enjoy the Fate movies without playing the games, that is not a guilty pleasure. It's just a pleasure. If you love the erratic humor of Hell of a Boss, you don't need to write a disclaimer about how you understand the criticism. You can just like it. When we constantly qualify our enjoyment, we are telling ourselves that our feelings are wrong. We are letting the opinion police rent space in our heads. We are prioritizing the approval of strangers on the internet over our own dopamine. The point I'm trying to make, and the reason I wanted to say this, is that we need to separate critical analysis from human experience. I can critique the pacing of a Fate anime. I can acknowledge that Hazbin Hotel has flaws in its world building. I can analyze the animation techniques of the amazing digital circus. That is critical analysis part. It's fun, it's intellectual, it's a hobby. But the human experience part, that is sacred. That is the part where a story makes you cry or laugh or feels less alone. And that part is untouchable. Your criticism, no matter how well researched, no matter how many hours of video essays you've watched, stops mattering the second it's used to hurt someone else's enjoyment. If you are a Fate fan who only watched the movies and thinks Saber is cool, you are valid. If the Amazing Digital Circus is your comfort show that gets you through a bad week, you are valid. If you start a franchise in the wrong order and love it anyway, you are valid. My opinion is that these things are great. Your opinion might be different, but the fact that these stories exist and that they make people feel something, that matters more than any video essay, any Reddit thread, or any angry comment section ever could. So, like what you like, don't apologize, and let people enjoy things. Thank you for listening.